Dear students, once you have make use of the SPSS software to test the randomness in the required variable by making use of the runs test, so we are assuming that your data is already been entered, the variable is being defined, and you have followed the required procedure for testing the randomness in the data. Once you have applied the procedure, SPSS would provide you with the particular output under the runs test through the output window. So you would make use of the p-value that will be provided to you, and by making use of that, you would be able to accept or reject your null hypothesis on the basis of the evidence you have had. So students, this problem was about the departures from normal of the daily temperatures that were being recorded at Atlanta, Georgia during the period November 1974. We were required to test the pattern of departures above and below normal, that whether they are following the non-random process or they are random in nature. So as you can see that some of the departures, they were below the normal and some were above. That means some of them were positive. As you can see that first 6 observations, they were positive, whereas number 7, number 9 and couple of other observations, they were negative. So that is showing the departures below the normal temperature and above the normal temperature. So once we have followed the entire procedure of SPSS to test the randomness by employing the runs test, so this particular result would appear before you. So students, as you can see under the null hypothesis, it is being tested that the sequence of values defined by departure normal temperature less than equal to 0 and greater than 0 are they random or they are not random. So students, if you remember, हमारे पास कुछ values they were positive whereas the rest of the values were negative. So we have taken that 0 cutoff value to define the negative as well as the positive values. So 0 was the midpoint that is differentiating the negative values with that of the positive values. So it was being tested through one sample's run test, and the p-value that is being obtained under the significance column is 0.006, whereas the decision by the SPSS is being recorded that we would have to reject a null hypothesis. So let us employ our procedure for testing the runs test, and we can see that whether we can reject or accept a null hypothesis on the basis of the evidence. So students, under step number 1, you would have to employ the pair of hypotheses as being H0 and H1. So under H0, you would be taking the statement that the pattern of occurrence of negative and positive departures from normal is determined by a random process, whereas under the alternative you would state that the pattern of occurrence of negative and positive departures from normal may not be random, whereas under step number 2 we would be taking alpha, which is 0.05. Under step 3, our test statistic would make use of the number of runs that are denoted as R. Step number 4 is calculation, where you would obtain the p-value for the runs test that was being given by SPSS, and it is noted as 0.006. Now students, this particular p-value is to be compared with the observed p-value, which is 0.05. So under critical region, we define that we'll have to reject H0 if our p-value would remain less than alpha. So as you can observe that the p-value that was being given to us under SPSS comes out to be 0.006, and it is very much less than alpha, where our alpha was 0.05. Therefore, H0 will be rejected, and we can conclude that the pattern of occurrence of temperature above and below normal is not random.